All right, so for day 2 of our 2.5 notes, we're going to look at the 4 special cases that can arise when we're dealing with our compound inequalities. So let's take a look at this first one. It says x is greater than 5 or x is less than 10. Go ahead and take a second and graph it, and then let's talk about it once you've got it graphed. Okay, so for x is greater than 5, that's an open circle, arrow to the right. X is less than 10 is a closed circle, arrow going to the left. But this is an or, it's not an and. If it were an and, we would want just this middle section, and we would erase the arrows. However, it is not just that middle section. Remember, our or, it says that it's where it works for at least one of your inequalities. So if I'm thinking about this line that I'm drawing here, it works for this section over here. Both of them work here, and then the line that I drew from the 5 works in this section over here. So in fact, the entire line of our number line has a graph over it. So what would that be? That would be all real numbers. Okay. For the second one, we have an and because it doesn't say or. And if I think about rewriting this, this would actually be x is less than 5 and x is greater than 10. So x is less than 5 would be an open circle arrow to the left. X is greater than 10 would be an open circle arrow to the right. But this is an and. It's supposed to be where they overlap. Where do they overlap? Well, they don't. So that would make it no solution. Try these last two and then come back and check and see how you did. Okay, so for x is greater than 6, it's an open circle arrow to the right. For x is less than 9, it's an open circle arrow to the right as well. This is an and. We want to know where it works for both of them. So if I'm thinking about my graph, this section over here doesn't have any lines. This section in the middle has only one line. It's this section over here that actually has both lines. We want where it has both lines. So if I'm thinking about where it has both lines, it's going to be this section here with an arrow going over, and I actually need to erase that section over there. So what would my answer be? My answer would be x is greater than 9. That's the only place where it worked for both of them. There was a line over both of them at this point. All right, so I have x is greater than 6 or x is greater than 9. So it's the same graph, open circle, arrow going to the right, open circle, arrow going to the right, but this time it's an or. So if it's an or, I want to know where does it work for at least one of them, okay? So this section over here doesn't work for either of them. This section, it works for our x is greater than 6, and this section it actually works for both. So where does it work for at least one of them? Well, from here over, it works for at least one of them. So what would my answer be? It would be x is greater than 6. All right, so those are your 4 special cases that could possibly arise. If you get one of these 4 special cases, the first thing I would do is go back and check your work. Make sure you haven't left off a negative somewhere. Make sure you haven't forgotten to flip a sign if you multiplied or divided by a negative. Make sure that you're paying attention to whether your variable's on the left or the right-hand side of the inequality. So were you graphing it? Common mistake I see is when you have it written in this format, graphing that incorrectly. Always try to rewrite it so that it's written in the format that's easier to graph. But if you really have checked your work and you get one of these 4 graphs, then now you know what your special cases are going to be called. Take a second and write your summary.